Once again, good evening, everyone. This is John Guiliana. I'm joined tonight by Alan Bass. Alan, how are you tonight?
Very good. Good evening, everyone.
Tonight we're going to be talking about a decision that often comes up, and frankly comes up in many businesses, not just healthcare, on outsourcing certain business processes to maximize efficiency and optimize profitability. Let me first get started, if I may, by talking a little bit about the housekeeping that we normally go through. Everyone here is in a listen-only mode, but Alan, what I'm going to do is go through this slide deck, and if you can just field any questions for me, we'll certainly answer questions at the end of this webinar. You simply type them into your GoToWebinar pane that you have on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll be happy to address them. Also, this webinar is being recorded. Everybody is going to receive a recorded version of this webinar, along with, on one of the slides, you will see a document that I'm going to attach to the recording as we send them out to everybody who's registered for tonight. I do want to start with a bit of a disclosure. Tonight, what I'm going to be doing is balancing, providing you with some insight about how to optimize and improve your billing and collection process, but I'm also going to be hopefully selling you not a product and not a service, but most definitely selling you on a concept. And again, this is a concept that's sweeping industries nationwide. It's a concept of outsourcing, and I'm going to show you from an economic perspective why outsourcing billing, particularly now during this complex environment of coding and billing, why it makes so much practical sense for your podiatry practice. So let's jump right in and talk about the foundation of billing, which is account receivable management, collecting those monies that are owed to you. The fact is, the longer it takes a claim to get paid, the more likely it is that it will never get paid. That is a well-found statistic, and this is why your account receivable management is so crucial. It's literally a game of beat the clock. You've got to get the claims paid as fast as you can, because statistically, if you don't, you will see that many of them just never get paid for a variety of different reasons, some of which I'll cover tonight. If you look at claims that are 30 days old, you have almost a 90% chance of that claim being paid. But take a look at what happens when that claim gets to 120 days. It almost cuts your chance in half. So again, it's really a game of beat the clock, and your AR management is absolutely crucial because it is ultimately what makes up your practice's critical cash flow. There's a few reasons that claims are denied and why we see a growing AR, shifting the AR to the left into aging buckets of 60 days, 90 days, and 120 days. The most prevalent reason for claims to be denied is improper demographics. You're not capturing the proper information on that patient. The second most common reason is wrong insurance. I think you would all agree that patients are changing insurance so rapidly nowadays that it's incredibly important for us to make sure that we have the right insurance on the patient. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second because both the first and the second reasons for denial, improper demographics and wrong insurance, literally should never, ever happen. It shouldn't happen because of the automated process of patient eligibility. Many of you know that patient eligibility is integrated into TrackNet. You simply sign up for it and you should be using it. It is really a shame when we see denials caused by these first two reasons. The patient eligibility feature will tell you the right insurance, the right demographics. It'll tell you the co-pays due, the deductibles in real time that you should be collecting at the time of service. The third most common reason is that somebody is not following correct coding initiative edits, CCI edits. You have to line up the proper modifiers and proper diagnosis with CPT codes. This is in itself a science, so you have to be really educated in knowing correct code that your claims ultimately are not denied. The fourth reason is untimely submission. Again, it's very disheartening to see claims that go to untimely filing and are never able to be retrieved because of untimely filing. Realize that even if you submit a claim out the door, some of these carriers will deny the claim if the claim is not appealed, if there are incorrect things with the claim, or perhaps only one line item gets paid and the second line item needs to be appealed. The clock literally starts all over again. Even though you may have submitted it in time, you can be subject to timely filing if that claim is left dormant too long. And some of these carriers, frankly, have only a 90-day timely filing date. And then lastly, the fifth reason is a reason that's out of our control. The carriers we know have stall tactics to hold on to our money as long as possible. But certainly reason 1, 2, 3, and 4 are within our control. And this is the science behind great revenue cycle management.
Hey, John, sorry to interrupt. Before you even
Yes, sir.
Continue on, somebody already has a question that they want to find out about signing up for patient eligibility. How do they go about doing that? Good
question. So at the end of this email will be at the end of this webinar will be my email. If you contact me, I will direct you right to the person that can get you signed up for patient eligibility. Thanks, Alan.
Great.
Let's talk a little bit about this concept of outsourcing. And I know that there are some preconceived notions about outsourcing. Hopefully I will cover your individual concerns about outsourcing, but there are a vast amount of advantages whenever we outsource, particularly a process like billing. Number one, you get expertise that doesn't need constant training or initial training, expertise which stays abreast of all the changes in coding and billing. There's also labor flexibility, and by that I mean, let's suppose you have two full-time billers in your practice. If one of those billers gets ill and is out for the flu, for example, your billing department is down 50%. That can literally crush your cash flow because it's going to crush your account receivable management. Thirdly, it gives you the ability to focus on your crucial business processes. In other words, your core competency. What's your core competency? Seeing patients. By outsourcing a complex process like billing, it allows you to focus on that patient and therefore eliminate much of what I will reference shortly, known as opportunity losses. You'll hear me talk about opportunity costs and opportunity losses when businesses do not focus on their core competency. And the last advantage is reduced operational and recruitment costs. Indeed, when I do a lot of cost-benefit analyses for doctors when they're considering outsourcing, and I'll show you an example of one shortly, the true cost of doing billing in-house is much higher than most doctors believe, and you'll see why in a second. The true cost is anywhere between 10 and 12 and sometimes even higher % of collections. When you outsource, as you'll see, it becomes much less. We have no reservation at all about outsourcing other business processes. For example, many of us would never think about doing our own IT or our own HIPAA security risk analysis. Many of us would never think about doing our own legal or our own web design. Some people even outsource marketing. But when it comes to billing, we sort of have a different sentiment about that, and hopefully by the end of this webinar you'll see economically why it makes so much sense. And I know there are some pushbacks about outsourcing. Some of the common themes that I often hear about outsourcing is that, well, it might expose confidential data, or there might not be customer focus or customer service that is provided by my own practice. And the last thing I often hear is that billing companies seemingly go after only the easy money. Well, you'll see how all three of these things really don't apply when we talk about NEMO billing that's done through your TrackNet database, simply because we have points of differentiation that I'll cover shortly. There's no question that there are hidden costs to doing billing. As I referenced earlier, most doctors really underestimate what it's currently costing them to do billing in-house. Economists talk all the time about this thing called opportunity costs. All an opportunity cost, what it means is it's the cost of an alternative foregone. In simple terms, it means that if you pursue doing choice A with limited resources, by definition it means that you must do less of choice B. If you do more A, you must do less B, simply because we have finite resources. So what does it really cost you to do billing? Well, there's a whole analysis that can be provided that you'll see shortly, but it's essential that you consider human resources, and this is the one that everybody is always looking at. You're considering the biller's salary, their benefits, and taxes. That's quite obvious. But some of the less obvious things are things like the technology that that biller uses, the computers which have a certain lifespan and ultimately have to be replaced, etc., the postage, the physical opportunity cost. Remember what an opportunity cost is. If I'm investing the square footage of my office to do billing, I'm not able to use that square footage to do something else, like better revenue generating processes. And the human opportunity cost along with the physical opportunity cost. If I'm investing in people to do billing, then they're not capable of doing other tasks that might generate even more revenue. And then, of course, you have human error, claims rejections associated with non-specialization. It takes a lot to keep up with the changes that are going on in the coding and billing world nowadays. So ultimately there is naturally always going to be some human error and claim rejections as a result of that. Therefore, in my experience, most of the practices that I analyze come in somewhere between 10 and 12%, sometimes even higher, 10 to 12% of collections. I'm not going to really get too deep into the microeconomics associated with the concept of outsourcing, but I do want to bring to your attention something known as specialization and the possibility frontier curve. This is a microeconomic principle that I think will really help you understand the opportunity costs and why outsourcing any business process really works, whether we're talking about billing or something else. If we were to graph medical care versus non-medical tasks for the purpose of this webinar would be billing. And we put non-medical tasks on the x-axis along the bottom and your medical care on the y-axis, the vertical line going upwards. In order for you to do more billing and move from point A to point B, you see that you have to move along this curve, which economists call the possibility frontier curve. By moving from point A to point B, you've indeed increased your non-medical task capability. But look at what you've done to your medical care capability. You've vastly decreased that. That's because, again, of opportunity cost and the finite amount of resources that any business has. You must move along this possibility frontier curve. But when you outsource, something different happens. Because of specialization of labor, and because you are outsourcing this to a whole new team of people who are specialized, you're no longer forced to move along that possibility frontier curve. What happens is ultimately a brand new possibility frontier curve exists. And now you see, to move from point A to point B, thereby increasing your amount of non-medical tasks, you did not lose any medical care. So the possibility frontier curve shows you what happens when you outsource, whether we're talking about billing, marketing, IT, or any other business process. It helps define why it makes so much sense. Now, I referenced earlier that I perform these cost-benefit analysis as a consultant. I do this for billing or many other decision-making that doctors have to do, whether they're thinking of capital equipment to purchase or whatever. This is an example, and by the way, this is actually a real example of a practice whose current collections are $1,235,000. You can see in the first column that I've listed all of the expenses associated with doing billing in-house. Those include the billing payroll, those include the payroll expenses, the TrackNet subscription fees, the IT support, other hardware costs, because again, your biller's computers at some point expire and need to be replaced. Billing educational costs, your biller is going to need educational costs to keep abreast in changes. And then opportunity costs. In my experience, again, thinking back to that possibility frontier curve, the opportunity loss associated with doing billing in-house can be anywhere from 3.5 to 7% of collections. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it really adds up because you're not focusing on your core competencies. So this practice, their total billing costs were about $130,000. By outsourcing, at, in this case, 6.25%. Every practice is different based on size. The pricing is determined by an algorithm. All of those expenses disappear. And you see the ultimate cost by outsourcing becomes $77,000, approximately $77,000, providing greater than a $53,000 annual annuity to this practice. That goes right into the owner's pockets, over $53,000. So that's the analytical way to really look at what is it currently costing you and what are the advantages of outsourcing. Now, how do you know whether or not...
Hey, John,
yes, sir.
I got a quick question about really something on that last slide about, how you figure out what you charge, we're charging clients for billing. While we know it's an algorithm, the person wants to know, they use a lot of over-the-counter products within their practice, and they wanted to know, since that's something that they handle and is not part of that claim they're generating, is that included in what would be charged to them, whatever that percentage is?
That's a great question. So only those things which generate an insurance claim that ultimately are worked by the team of billers are included in that percentage. So the answer would be no. If you're selling a product over the counter, those monies are not included in the 6.25%. Those are not monies you would be paying to the outsourced billing company. Make sense?
Right. Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the benchmarks so that you can really determine whether or not your billing and collection and account receivable management is strong, or are there weaknesses that are really compromising your cash flow? Some of the common benchmarks that I look at, which eventually can lead to some red flags. Your total AR. Your total AR should never exceed more than 2 months of what your practice charges out. That's charges out. So the money's owed to you by patients and by your carriers should never equal more than 2 months worth of charges. So if your practice charges out $100,000 per month, I would never want to see your total AR climb to more than $200,000. If it does, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. I'm particularly going to focus on your aged claims. Your aged claims, and by that I mean claims that are older than 90 days, should never be more than 15 to 20% of your total AR. Now, it's important to realize this. That metric is valid only for a clean AR report. What do I mean by that? Many AR reports are loaded with monies that are truly uncollectible. If you have balances on your AR report from patients that have been dead for 10 years, that AR report is obviously adulterated and it's not valid. So this metric, this benchmark, 15 to 20%, is valid for only a clean AR report. That's why it's important that you keep your AR report pristine by writing off, adjusting off those balances appropriately that should be written off. Either by contract, they have to be written off, or by virtue of them being so old that they're not collectible. But nevertheless, those claims older than 90 days should never occupy more than 15 to 20% of your total accounts receivable. I also look at your net collection ratio. Now, that's different than your gross collection ratio. Your gross collection ratio is merely what you're collecting versus what you're charging, and to me, that is completely irrelevant. I think you could all imagine that if you set your fees such that your bunion surgery, your first metatarsal head osteotomy that you did, you're billing $20,000 for, I think you could imagine why you would have a very, very low gross collection ratio. That's irrelevant. What I look at is your net collection ratio. Your net collection ratio takes into consideration the contractually obligated adjustments that you must take. So it's what you collect versus what you charge after you take out your contractually obligated adjustments. That net collection ratio is valid, and that should be greater than 95%. In some of the analysis that I do for prospective clients, they're hovering at 90% or 92%. And while that few percent doesn't seem like a lot, in some practices that adds up to be a lot of money, and it's an annuity again in perpetuity. The next benchmark that I look at and keep my fingers on the pulse of is what's known as days in receivables. Days in receivables define how long it's taking your average claim to get paid. Now, I know that some insurance carriers pay very fast, others you have to fight them for the money, but this is an overall average done at a 1-year interval. I wouldn't recommend ever doing this in less than a 6-month interval. If you try to do this monthly, you're going to see such wide variations. So at the very least, 6 months, most appropriately at 1 year. You simply look at your total AR, you divide that by your gross charges for the year, and then you multiply that number by 360 days. That's going to give you your days in receivable for the year. Hopefully that number is less than 45 days. You should not have a revenue cycle that's greater than 45 days. If you did this in 6 months, then simply change the number to 180 rather than 360. It would be your total AR divided by your gross charges for 6 months and you multiply that number by 180 days. And the next benchmark is your first pass denial rate. By first pass denial rate, what I'm referencing here is claims that are automatically rejected at the gateway level because of improper demographics or because of wrong insurances. Once again, this should never happen. Everybody who does billing should be using the integrated patient eligibility feature. Making mistakes out of the gate has a rippling effect and forces your claims to age. That should definitely be less than 3%, your first pass denial rate. So a lot of you always ask, particularly at conferences that I'm at and doing consulting for, should I be considering outsourcing? And one of the things that everybody seems to get hung up on is the percent of collections that the billing company is pricing it at. And what I encourage doctors is this: you shouldn't get hung up on price. You should be far more looking at value than price. This is a value business process, not a price business process. So ask other questions. What else does the billing company offer you? But as a general rule, if you are not doing billing well, if you're missing many of the benchmarks I just talked about, even the price becomes irrelevant, because if you need something, you pay for it whether you buy it or not. Many of you have heard me talk about that business philosophy almost ad nauseum. If you need something, you pay for it whether you buy it or not. You either pay for it by outsourcing and paying a biller their percentage, or you pay for it by lost income by trying to do your own in-house billing. But really look and dive into the value. What is the billing company offering you? For example, ask about their appeal process. Please don't write anything down from this slide because I'm going to provide it to you. This was the slide I was referencing that I'm going to attach. Everybody here is going to get a copy of this recorded webinar, and it'll also come with this attachment so you could see what we use at NEMO Billing. We have a first claim denial level, a secondary appeal denial level, and it even goes down to a consulting phase denial level where actually physicians like myself, billing consultants, including me, go head-to-head, peer-to-peer, with the medical director of a carrier if we know we are right that this claim should be paid. We get on the phone with the medical director or the provider relations to get this claim paid. I don't think many other billing companies do offer that, but because we're so podiatry specific and we're backed by a team of consultants, we have the ability to do that. That's one of the things that differentiates NEMO Billing. Not only are we podiatry specific, meaning that's all we do, so we know the industry of podiatry. Secondly, unlike many other billing companies, there's no transfer of data. You don't have to take your super bills and get them to your biller, costing you time, costing you opportunity loss.
John, we seem to have lost you for a second. Well, hopefully we will get John back in the meantime. John, can you hear me? Let me just see what's going on with John. He seems to have cut out there. So while we're waiting for John to get his line back, somebody had asked a question, which I will.
Sorry, Alan.
Oh,
I don't know what. I think I must have forgot to pay the phone bill. I don't know what happened, but anyway, I think I know where I got cut off. There's no data transfer.
Right.
Costing you time and money getting materials to your outsourced biller. Through NEMO Billing, the billers are working right through your TrackNet database in real time. And then what I believe to be the foundation of what differentiates NEMO is our advisory practice improvement services. You have a team of consultants that literally guide you in real time, and particularly through quarterly coaching calls. We help save you money, make you money, and be compliant by providing you with a monthly comprehensive report of your practice's data, showing you your strengths, your weaknesses, your missed opportunities, as well as a quarterly coaching call to help you improve your practice. Again, because we're podiatry specific, because we're your colleagues, we truly want to help you improve your practice, not just do your billing. So that's truly what differentiates us.
Hey, John,
Alan, did you have a, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, somebody had a question. I was going to answer it, so I'll throw it out to you. When somebody signs up for our billing service, are they given a dedicated biller?
Yes. So what happens is you get a dedicated biller that you will have a weekly call with. Certainly you can call them and email them any other time, but there's a standing call because we want information flowing continually and robustly between your office and the biller. And that's done weekly. And behind that biller is a whole team of billers doing your account receivables, your age claims, and so forth.
A couple more questions. Somebody wants to know, let me see if I can interpret this question. Well, it's tough. Okay, can you answer what is the industry average per patient value? And if I'm below what would be an industry standard, what can we do to help them increase their per visit value and help them grow their practice? I know that's a little bit of a compound question there.
No, it is, but it has a couple of good root causes to it. So that everybody understands what per visit value is, it's really per visit revenue. It's your total patient visits divided by your total collections. Actually reverse, your total collections divided by your total patient visits. So if you collected $1 million and you did so on 10,000 patient visits for the year, your per visit revenue or your per visit value would be $100. Now, let's take a look at what that means. Your per visit value could be low because you don't have comprehensive protocols integrated into your practice. You're not integrating many levels of different services to help patients get better faster. But it could also be as a result of a poor collection process, because even if you have all the integrated services and technologies to offer patients and you indeed engage in comprehensive clinical protocols, if you are not collecting that money, your per visit value is adversely affected. It's sort of like trying to fill the bathtub with the drain wide open. You're not getting it on the collection end. So how do we help improve your per visit value? In both of those regards. We tighten up your revenue cycle management to make sure the billing process is being done accurately and effectively, but also we engage in these coaching calls because we're looking at your data and we have comparative data and know when you have some weaknesses that we could help strengthen simply by educating you. So again, we're there to help improve your practice. Both of those things will, in some instances, vastly improve a practice's per visit value. Any other questions, Alan?
No, that is it. You were very comprehensive. So people people I think are either sleeping or interested in what you had to say.
Well, there's my email that everyone sees now on my screen, John@NEMO-CP. I'm happy to answer any questions that might pop into your head after this webinar is over. And I also don't necessarily want you to jot down this link you see for a profit analysis, but you'll get this slide deck, and if you're interested in having an analysis done by our consultants please go to this link and you'll be able to get an analysis that shows you what the possible benefits for your individual practice would be to outsource. Alan, any follow-up thoughts?
Not from me, and it seems like you've answered all the questions.
All right. I thank all of you for joining tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again next month on our regularly scheduled webinar. Thank you, Alan, for joining.
Have a great evening. Thank you, John.
You too. Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.